I'm attorney David Rodriguez with immigration-consultation.lawyer. Today, I'll go over some basic information regarding passports and visas for U.S. citizens. This may be common knowledge for many people, but they don't teach this in school. So for those of you who have never traveled internationally, you may have some questions about this topic. And I know because I've done thousands of consultations over the years and I've heard these preliminary questions that some take for granted when people begin to think about traveling internationally. In the end, I'll show you some examples with my U.S. passport so we can see firsthand what we're talking about. If you are a U.S. citizen and want to travel to a different country, you will need a U.S. passport. This passport is the identification that proves you are a U.S. citizen to the foreign country. If you don't have one, you need to file an application at travel.state.gov. This application can be filed online and will require evidence of your U.S. citizenship. The processing could take 2 months or more, and if this is your first passport, you'll have an in-person appointment at the most local passport agency in your city or state at the end of the process. There are ways to pay for expedited processing for upcoming trips, but my advice for anyone is to get a passport as soon as possible. Just get it over with. Once received, it's valid for 10 years, and when you renew, you don't have to go back for any in-person appointments again. When all of this is completed, you will receive your passport, which actually looks like a little book. So let's take a look. The main page here obviously has all of your information. So I blocked some stuff out for privacy reasons, but this is your passport number, and there'll be your date of birth, the date of issue, and the date of expiration. And you'll need this information when you file for a visa, which we'll talk about later. Okay? Briefly, I would like to mention that every U.S. citizen can get a U.S. passport, even newborn babies. The main exception is criminal history, and I'm talking about felonies. But maybe you did the crime, did the time 20, 30 years ago. Now you're a changed man, have a good job, file taxes, have a fiance overseas, and you're stuck. Well, maybe we can do something. You'll have to schedule a consultation, and we can go over your options there. Now, the U.S. passport is considered a powerful passport because it allows you easy access to many countries around the world. Remember, the passport is just the U.S. saying you're cool to travel, but that doesn't mean that every country will just let you in. So this brings us to the part about visas, and I'm not talking about the credit card. The visa is permission from the foreign nation to allow you to enter their country. And for many countries around the world, a U.S. citizen does not require a visa. Having a U.S. passport is enough to travel to a lot of countries and be allowed in for 30, 60, or maybe even 90 days. Some countries, it's called visa-free or visa upon arrival. In these cases, you do nothing except arrive to the country with your U.S. passport, and they will process you at the airport or border crossing, and they stamp your passport with entry and exit dates. If you want to stay longer, you can file for an extension, which is a separate process that you file while you're in that country. Now, there are some countries that require a visa prior to travel. China, Russia, Iran. It's usually countries that the U.S. does not have the greatest relationship with. So this will require some pre-planning in advance. The foreign country is going to want your travel plans, so you'll have to book the travel in advance and submit some paperwork to the foreign country's embassy or consulate. It's more paperwork. They'll want your flight info, your hotel, where you're staying, and your purpose of travel. Most likely, it will be for tourism purposes. Nowadays, a lot of countries do e-visas online and will email you a separate piece of paper that you print and bring with you. Vietnam is an example, and I'll tell you a story about that in a bit. Otherwise, you'll have to mail your passport to the embassy or consulate, and they will issue the visa and send your passport back. I'll have a separate short video that explains some basics about embassies and consulates. Also, there are third-party companies that you can pay to process your visa, or you can file on your own, and I can probably help you do that. Now, here's my Vietnam visa story. I booked a flight just a few days in advance and a hotel. I filed for my e-visa online, which said it took about 3 days to process. There was an error with the application, and I had to go back and forth, which took the processing longer than when my flight was. So I arrive at the airport and they go, "Where's your visa?" And I'm refreshing my email that it's still processing. So I missed my flight. I missed my hotel, my plans for that time, and I lost some money. So that's a little story about how you need to prepare to get these visas. Um, Now, let's take a look at the passport. Like I said, it's like a little book, has all these pages. We've already looked at the biographical page. Now, when you enter some of these countries, they're going to stamp it with an entry date and an exit date. And it's really hard to see because some of these stamps are faded, but this is the Philippines. So I entered on April 27th, and they gave me until May 27th. And here is my exit stamp. I left on May 4th. So I left within the time frame, so I'm good. So if I go back to the Philippines, I've abided by their rules, and they will allow me to enter again. This was a visa-free country, so I just came with my passport. Now, you can see here, this is Vietnam. I eventually made it to Vietnam. I landed on May 4th. They gave me till May 24th, and you see that they wrote that in pen. And EV means I had the e-visa. So they finally issued the e-visa, but they gave me a shorter period of time. Now, let's look at an extension. So I arrived in Thailand. They stamped my passport on January 17th, and they gave me till February 15th. But if you look down here, on February 6th, I got an extension. I was in Bangkok. I went to the office. I sat there with a bunch of people, paid some money, filled out some paperwork, and they stamped and they gave me an extension till March 16th, 2024. And that's the day that I left. So I'm good to go there. Now, here is an example of a visa, a full-on visa that they place in your passport. This is for Cambodia. It is a single entry visa for tourism purposes. I had until June 15th of 2024 to enter the country. That doesn't mean I could stay to that date. That means I needed to enter by that date to get my 30 days. And here I entered on March 16th, and they gave me till April 15th. And then here's my exit stamp that shows that I left on March 28th. So that was within that time. And as you can see, I also went back to Thailand later on after the extension was granted a separate time, and they let me back in. So it's a US passport. I hope you get to fill it with a lot of stamps too and travel around the world. I look forward to helping you as I do that. And if you have further questions about this topic or other immigration questions, make sure to check out my site, immigrationconsultation.lawyer, and I look forward to helping you on your immigration journey. Thank you.